These guys tried to kill Rasputin with cakes filled with enough cyanide to kill 5 people. And when that didn't work, they gave him poisoned wine. But Rasputin, this mad monk guy, just laughed and asked for more. It's completely insane. So they shot him point blank. And even that didn't stop him. This is the story of a man who literally could not die. And we're going to find out what it actually took to finally take him down. This is the legend of Rasputin's death, and for 100 years, everyone believed it. It's a tale of an unkillable man, a literal devil who clung to life with supernatural powers. But the truth is way crazier than the myth. So today, we're going back in time to that freezing night in December 1916. First, I'm going to tell you the completely wild, famous story of how he was murdered. Then, we're going to be detectives and look at the real-life autopsy report to see what actually happened. The difference between the myth and reality is going to blow your mind, and it says more about his killers than it does about him. Before Rasputin was this unkillable legend, he was just a normal dude. He was born in 1869 in a tiny village in Siberia, became a farmer, got married, had kids. For like half his life, he was completely ordinary. You would never guess he would one day basically control the entire Russian Empire. But then around 1897, something just snapped. He had this massive religious experience and became a holy wanderer. He never officially worked for the church, but he built this insane reputation as a mystic and a healer who could literally stare into your soul with his super intense eyes. People started talking, and soon his reputation was huge. He made it all the way to the capital, St. Petersburg. In a city obsessed with mystics, Rasputin's raw peasant charisma was a total sensation. And in November 1905, he did the impossible. He got a meeting with the Tsar and Tsarina, the king and queen of Russia. And what got him in with the royal family forever was their only son, Alexei. The kid had hemophilia, which means even a tiny bump could be deadly, and the doctors couldn't do anything. The Tsarina was terrified. So they call in Rasputin during one of these emergencies, and get this, as he's praying over the boy, the bleeding just stops. It was like a miracle. The Tsarina literally thought Rasputin was a saint sent by God. Now historians think his calming vibe just helped chill everyone out, which can actually slow bleeding. Plus, he told the doctors to stop giving the kid aspirin, which we now know is a blood thinner, the worst thing for a hemophiliac. But the Tsarina didn't care how he did it. Rasputin was their savior, and from that moment on, our friend, as she called him, was basically untouchable. Rasputin's power went to a whole new level during World War I. In 1915, the Tsar went off to lead the army and left the Tsarina in charge. And guess who she listened to for everything? Rasputin. People were getting hired and fired just because he said so. His influence was everywhere, and the Russian nobles were freaking out. They saw this random peasant running the government while millions of Russian soldiers were dying. So a group of rich nobles decided that was it. To save Russia, Rasputin had to die. The masterminds behind this were 3 main guys: Prince Felix Yusupov, a ridiculously rich guy married to the Tsar's niece; Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich, the Tsar's actual cousin; and Vladimir Purishkovich, a super intense politician. These guys didn't think they were murderers. They thought they were heroes. They literally believed killing this one guy would save the 300-year-old Romanov dynasty. The plan was simple. Prince Yusupov would be the bait. He would lure Rasputin to his giant palace for a late-night party, And once he was there, isolated and unsuspecting, they would kill him. Okay, what you're about to hear is the story that Prince Yusupov himself told the world. For over a century, this is what everyone believed, and it is absolutely terrifying. On this freezing cold night, December 29th, 1916, Yusupov gets Rasputin and takes him to a secret basement room in his palace. He set out a table with tea, Rasputin's favorite pink cakes, and wine. But what Rasputin didn't know was that the food and drinks were packed with enough potassium cyanide to kill a small army. Yusupov, supposedly shaking, offers him the poisoned cakes. Rasputin eats one. Then another. Yusupov is just staring in horror because nothing is happening, so he pours him a glass of the poisoned wine. Rasputin drinks it, then drinks another one, and still nothing. According to Yusupov, Rasputin just complained about a burning feeling and asked for more. The poison literally did nothing to him. Completely terrified, Yusupov runs upstairs to his friends like, "The plan failed." He grabs a revolver, goes back down, and shoots Rasputin right in the chest. Rasputin screams and falls onto a bearskin rug. He's dead, or so they thought. A few minutes later, Yusupov leans over the body, and this is where it gets insane. One of Rasputin's eyes opens, then the other. In Yusupov's own words, the eyes were green as poison. With a demonic scream, Rasputin jumps up, foaming at the mouth, and attacks Yusupov. This guy who was just poisoned and shot in the chest was alive and running away. He stumbles outside into the snowy courtyard. Another one of the killers, Purishkevich, chases him, shooting his pistol. He misses again, then hits him in the back, and finally shoots him in the head. The monk collapses into the snow, but even then, the story says he wasn't dead. They rushed over and he was still trying to move, so they started beating him with a heavy club. Finally, they wrap his body in a curtain, drive to a bridge, and throw him into a frozen river. And the craziest part? When they found his body days later, they said his arms were free and frozen, like he was trying to punch his way through the ice. The legend says he finally died from drowning. That is an incredible story, and almost all of it is a complete lie. When they pulled Rasputin's frozen body from the river, a respected doctor did an official autopsy, and what he found tells a completely different and much less supernatural story. First up, the poison, the most famous part of the whole story. But the autopsy found zero, and I mean zero, evidence of poison in his stomach. Nothing. So what happened? Maybe they messed up the poison. Maybe the sugar in the food neutralized it. Or maybe his daughter was right and her dad just hated sweets and never would have eaten the cakes. Whatever the reason, the science is clear. Rasputin was not poisoned. Next, the drowning. The legend says he was alive when they threw him in the river. The autopsy says, nope. The doctor found no water in Rasputin's lungs. That's the key. If you're alive when you go in water, you automatically gasp and breathe it in. No water in the lungs means he was 100% dead before he even touched the water. The story of him breaking his bonds and clawing at the ice. Total fiction. So how did he actually die? The autopsy found 3 gunshot wounds, one in the chest, one in the back, and one final fatal shot, fired at point-blank range, straight to his forehead. This wasn't a panicked shot. That was an execution. The most likely scenario is that he was shot, collapsed, and then one of them walked up, put a gun to his head, and finished the job. The man who supposedly survived all that was actually killed in a much more simple, brutal way. If the evidence is so obvious, why does everyone believe this crazy myth? The answer is the guy who made it all up, Prince Felix Yusupov. His memoirs are basically the only source for this legendary story. And he had a huge reason to lie. He couldn't just be a murderer who killed an unarmed guy in his basement. No, he had to be a hero who killed a real-life demon to save Russia. For his story to work, Rasputin had to be some kind of supernatural monster that couldn't be killed. It turned a dirty murder into an epic fight between good and evil, with him as the star. The myth also spread because of timing. Just months after the murder, the Russian Revolution exploded. Everything was chaos. No one could do a real investigation, and the official autopsy report basically got lost. Yusupov's crazy story was the only one people heard, so it became the truth. And finally, the myth was just believable because of who Rasputin was. This was the guy who could supposedly heal people with a prayer, so of course people would believe he could also survive being poisoned and shot. The insane story of his death was the perfect final chapter for the insane story of his life. If you think this is as crazy as I do, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so you don't miss our next investigation. And tell me in the comments, what other historical legend should we expose next? So in the end, Rasputin didn't die like a demon. He died like a man, killed by gunshot wounds. There was no poison, no drowning. The entire story of him being unkillable was just propaganda made up by his killer to make himself look like a hero. But here's the biggest twist. The plan completely failed. They killed Rasputin to save the monarchy, but his death changed absolutely nothing. In fact, it might have made things worse by leaving the Tsar and Tsarina even more alone. Within months, the revolution they were trying to prevent happened anyway, and the entire Romanov dynasty was destroyed forever. And in a super creepy way, one of Rasputin's biggest predictions came true. He had once warned the Tsar that if he was killed by nobles, the entire imperial family would be dead in 2 years. It was a chillingly accurate prediction.